Scribbled notes, scribbled notes when I wrote these quotes. If I offend, pardon me, there's more of me to grow. Creative in my process, enjoy the show. The will is different when you recognize the different strokes. Different folks, same goals, we all want the most. So when we reach the top, we can enjoy the toast. The type of bread we get is fresh about the bakery. Told them don't play with me, with or without a degree. Don't question my intensity, bravery. Similar to agencies that want to see you fold. So just pray for me. Pray for me. Einstein with my energy.
Welcome to the Scribbled Notes podcast. How are you living?
How am I living? Oh boy. Day by day. I am living day by day. No, but it's been good. With book, new podcast as well, or new season of me and AR's podcast. So been busy with that. New job. I got a new cat. Actually, things have just been new. New day by day. That's about how I can handle it.
Hey, we like that. Why don't you introduce yourself for the listeners? You've obviously been on before, but I feel like there's definitely a need to reintroduce yourself.
Sure. Second time around. My name is Carolyn R. I'm author of Inside and Out. It'll be a trilogy. Jahmil was actually one of my beta readers pretty recently. So it's good to be back. This is a fun podcast.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. You recently went through this beta reader process. Do you want to describe what that was like for you?
Sure. So, essentially what I did was reach out to people, a few close friends, but I told them, I was like, look, I know we're friends. So that means you have a bigger responsibility. You need to be brutally honest with me. Don't be afraid of, we're friends. I love everything that you do. Like, no, tell me, what I can do better. Be cutthroat here. So some friends, and then I reached out to a few people that I just met through Instagram, through the writing community, which was, people like you. But I also knew that you wrote similar things. So I was looking for some beta readers that were in my genre a little bit. So they some pointers. And then I reached out to some people that I was like, there's no way they would ever pick up this book on their own. So I asked them if they could beta read it just to get some whole umbrella of opinions. I'm like, oh my God, I did. Like before, you would say one kind of note, but then the other person would be like saying the opposite. And I'm like, okay, so do I not change anything? Like, is this the happy medium? I don't know. Oh my God, it's been fun. It's nice taking a break from your book, from your writing as well, which I never thought I would.
Yeah, I think I've had similar experiences, especially with the beta reading process, because people give you so much different feedback. Like you literally can get the same chapter in the same sections. People just have vastly different opinions.
I had this one guy get back to me and he was like, look, I love the characters. I like your plot. I think you do a really good job of, divvying up the story, the pacing, but I don't like the story. Like, what do you mean? Like, what happened? And he basically misunderstood one thing that I had written, which vastly changes the entire perspective, the entire story, the entire everything. So I'm like, what if you didn't like it? Like, because he got confused about this one thing. So it just kind of made me wonder, like, well, damn, like how different would that feedback have been if you came to me sooner for clarification? Because now I know at least I need to be clearer in that one part, but how now does that affect everything else? So it's been like a whole back and forth. I feel like I'm working with like 4 or 5 different editors at once and trying to balance everything. Oh my God. But I really got to give a round of applause too, though, to Paul Williams. They were also beta readers, and like God bless them. They go through page by page and they give me notes back on my doc. So they've been like a help in how I've gone about my notes. So and then, of course you get some other beta readers. This was not you, by the way, but I did have one beta reader tell me like, it was perfect. And I'm like, it wasn't, but okay. So I don't know.
Yeah, the most helpful feedback. I did amazing. It's like,
right. It's like, look, I know I'm amazing, but this writing, I need some help. Oh, but it's been fun. Yeah, and with that break, like when my beta readers were working on it, now that I get to come back to it, it's like a fresh set of eyes, and I'm making, I think, the writing so much tighter, so much cleaner, tying things together more, which was a piece of your advice, actually, like bringing in more history, more pauses in between the characters, and how they respond, more dramatic effect, just making it more alive. And it's been really fun doing that.
Yeah, I think even the pausing piece, right? The break that you take between the beta readers getting the story and then when you actually get to start writing. Like the first time it happened for me, I didn't even realize that I just wasn't going to be writing for a while. Like you just go from always writing the novel to all of a sudden, oh, this is just.
It's like, what do I do? What did I do before I didn't write? Like, what was that life like? Was I happy? Like, but then meanwhile, I'm so stressed also, working on the whole self-publishing process as a whole. I mean, given I love when I am working on my book, I do find like those moments of like joy where I'm like, this is why I'm doing it. But it's such a catch-22 where it's like, who chooses to be an author? Like, why do we do that? Like, I don't get it, but it's so fun.
It takes up so much time.
Like, yeah.
More than anything else.
Effort, some money. Yeah. But no, I'd so much rather do the self-publishing process though, because I want to see it through and through. And I'm so curious about like how it all goes with the editing and the beta readers and the ARC readers and the editor and the graphic designer and like seeing every detail. I think the whole process of it is like an art. So yeah, here I am in the thick of it and it's happening.
Yeah, it's really cool, especially because you're going through it right now. You're finishing up the beta reading process, which means you're really like almost on the other side of it all, which is crazy.
Yeah. And like, I actually did it. This is kind of the fun thing about self-publishing is I did it a little bit out of order. So I hired an editor and she edited it like twice through just for like some grammar and some other kind of feedback stuff. And then I went and got beta readers, and then I'm going to take it to her, my current editor, one more time. And I'm looking at even getting a second editor as well. So like 2 sets of professional eyes on it. Like I've kind of just been doing a balancing act. I know most people do beta readers before they get an editor. So I've heard that's like the way to do it. But the fun thing with, self-publishing is that you can kind of play around with all those moving parts. So plus, I mean, now that I have my editor and I had some beta readers, quite a few of my beta readers were picking up grammar mistakes. And I'm like, that's why I hired an editor. It's like, why?
Yep.
It's like 1 or 2, but I mean like, a lot where it's kind of like, I'm a little bit upset about it, where it's like, I'm paying good money for this editor. So it's like, I don't know. I like doing it that way because some of my beta readers have picked up where my editor has like slacked. And now whether they know it or not, they're also critiquing my editor, not just my writing, but now like kind of as it is nearing the completion part of the entire editing process.
Yeah, and that's definitely just a major key for anyone listening. Like an editor is a person at the end of the day, and they're gonna miss things. And there's things that get missed in massive books, like Game of Thrones has a lot of mistakes in it, and that's a book that should not have any at this point. There's a ton of stories like that, and it's because you need a bunch of eyes on it. Like I remember I had a beta reader, so she was super late on her feedback. Love her though, she's amazing, but she was very late on the feedback. I was at the point where I had moved past that process. I was getting ready to publish. We were already doing the proofread step, and
she's like, I'm here.
She came in late with the buzzer beater, and she said like, "Oh, this word." And it wasn't spelled wrong. It was just incorrect usage, right? It was a very specific word. I think it was the word charred or something like that.
Okay.
And I used the wrong version of it.
Wow.
People don't use it often. So it's like, if you don't really use it often, you don't spell it often, you would never notice that it was a mistake. But she found it and it was like, a day or two before I was going to publish. So I was like, dude, like that was super clutch. But then I looked at my proofread and I was like, what happened to the proofread? You thought you were supposed to catch that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right. It makes you wonder, like, what? Oh my God. Yeah, that's kind of the beauty of just having all those eyes on it, especially like, or taking that break, because when I've gone back and I'm like, oh my God, the in there like 3 times in a row, where it was like the water. Like, it's like, I didn't even know what I was trying to say in my book. And I'm like, how did I not notice that? How did Google Docs or Word not pick up? They didn't put that red squiggly line. Like, oh my God.
Dramatic effect.
Because your brain will skip over at least like that second the or something. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Keep in mind too, like, we're writers, we're not editors. I keep telling myself over and over, like, I need to get an editor. I might need 2 editors. Like, it's okay. It's for the best. Yeah. Like, cause I was talking to another author and he said his book is now out. And I asked, like, what's something that, or like, how do you feel now that it's done? And I didn't really know what I was expecting for his answer, but this certainly like took me off guard. He was like, actually, I feel like I could have done a lot more with it. I feel like I could have taken my time with it. So I kind of took that to heart, because as soon as you get the manuscript done, at least for me, it was kind of like, oh my God, I'm finished. Like, that's it. And there's so much more that happens after that. And part of me like loves the process and wants to feel it all out. But then of course that excited part of me is like, get it published. I want to see it. So that's another thing I've been like battling with by taking it slow and waiting for feedback. I still have people that also haven't given me feedback for my beta reading either. And telling myself, you know, it's better to wait for feedback than not to get it at all, because like with your circumstance, you just don't know like what other people are going to pick up, and it could change so much.
Yeah, there's so much to the process, and timing, I think, as a self-published author is really on you, right? Like, you get to decide what that timeline is, and that makes a huge difference in the ending. I remember I pushed my book's release back a month, partly because I wanted to make sure the cover was done. I wanted to make sure everything in the cover was perfect. I wanted to make sure everything was spotless. And I remember when I did that, I was like, oh, everyone's gonna be so mad. They were expecting it September 1st. Then I was like, wait, no, they're gonna be fine. They're gonna be fine.
No one,
literally no one is worried about that but me. I set this arbitrary date for no reason. So it's like, yeah, like everyone, if it goes another 3 weeks, you're fine. Like, you can keep pushing things as long as the time, as long as you don't push it all the way off. But you're at the point now where it's like, if you have a manuscript that's finished, and I think that's the other piece I want to definitely note for anyone listening. Like, once you have a finished manuscript, like, your first draft is done, like, you can do whatever you want for the timeline at that point. I think it's a lot more difficult when you're like, oh, I'll just push the ending of the book off. It's like, no.
Oh my God.
Finish your book.
Yeah.
But self-publishing is really, really opening so many more doors, especially for authors. I wanted to ask you, what has been your experience so far as far as like entering the self-publishing world and getting to know other authors and other people who do this kind of work? What have you learned from them?
I really learned how like supportive, honestly, that everybody just is. How anybody that is self-publishing, we all just in a way kind of get each other. It really is such a community. Like, that's one thing that I don't know. I'm glad it's not like there's any kind of competition or a matter of like kind of gatekeeping or anything like that, like gatekeeping of information, like, and even the like podcasts like this. A lot of writers right now also do podcasts, and it's like, come on my podcast, let's connect, let's talk. Like, if you're not, you know, writing a book, like, you're at least talking about reading or about writing or something. So my whole experience with the self-publishing process has been so much smoother and so much more fun, simply because of the people that I've met along the way, who are kind of all over the place. You know, maybe they're still drafting their ideas, or maybe they have a book published, or everywhere in between. And like, no matter where you're at, you still can relate to the other person in that whole journey. So it's really just been like, it's been really nice in that way, creating relationships, especially with people that live like across the world. There's this one guy I was talking to, and he like posted something about his book coming out. And I like just messaged him. I was like, okay, like when is this coming out though? Like he like put an excerpt and it just like totally caught my attention. And he goes, you might be in your 60s or something like by then. Like we were just like joking about that. And I was like, you know what, I feel that. But I was like, all right, like, whatever, have a good night. And he goes, oh yeah, good morning. Like it was like 9 a.m. where he was, and it was like 1 a.m. where I was. And like we're just bonding about like our books. Like it's just the coolest thing to me. So yeah, self-publishing I think has been that period has been so vastly different than if you went traditional publishing, because traditional publishing, you are scouting and you are trying to interview and you are trying to kind of step on heads and get ahead of the curve and pitching your stories. And it almost is like any other kind of like entertainment industry where it can get very twisted and not super individualized. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've noticed, because I've interviewed a ton of authors, especially in some published ones, and I think their experience has been a lot different than what my experience was, especially with the debut novel. Like, I feel like they've had a lot more pressure during their debut piece. Like, I felt pressure, like, you'll feel pressure when that time is coming and you're like, I want to make sure I launch correctly. I want to make sure I get as many eyes to see it.
All on you.
Yeah, it's all on you. Like you have to do it all. I think their pressure, from when I talked to them, a lot of that pressure came from other people, like with expectations of X or Y, or even like funding. I remember one of my friends, he was running a GoFundMe. He was running a GoFundMe campaign to pay for, I think, the hardcover edition of his book. And in my head, I was like, dude, you can just go to Ingram Sparks and get a hardcover. Now you can go to KDP and get a hardcover for free. And you can go to Barnes and Noble. I had all these like answers. And then I was like, oh, you can't, because you're traditionally published. Like you can't just answer. You can't just solve the problem. Which it's
like gatekeeping.
Yeah, literally as a self-published author, I was like, oh, we could just I get an hardcover right now. I get an audiobook tomorrow if I wanted one. Right. It's like he can't do that. And it's like, I don't know. It was crazy. Hard. It was crazy the first time when I went to go answer his question, because I'll usually tell people like, oh, these are other resources, other places. Right. I was like, oh, you can't use any of those.
And I feel like that's like the initial reaction of self-publishers. It is like, look, I know the struggle, because it is hard, on yourself when you are doing everything yourself. So we're like, oh, here's this tip, here's this tool, like this side and the other. But yeah, like that pressure from the external, like outside, like, oh my God, you're never going to be satisfied, like until it comes from your intrinsic motivation or comes from within. If you're constantly just doing something for the pressures of the outside people, it's like, where is the satisfaction when you complete it? I can't even begin to picture what that looks like. And more power to the people that do choose to do traditional publishing. I'm sure they have their reasons. I just like don't understand them, but I'm glad like they're doing it, like, and they're still writing and they're still publishing a book and expressing themselves. Like it's all fantastic. I just noticed, with my experience with self-publishing has been one of my own, and I can relate to other people as well, which is good, which is nice to have.
Yeah, and honestly, I'll end the conversation on just self-publishing, get to your book, because I feel like people need to hear about that too. But the thing I've really enjoyed about self-publishing is the freedom that authors have to kind of connect, to talk to each other, to create community, and to be there, like kind of just around for each other. I feel all the self-published people. I've connected with a ton online. I've connected with a ton on Instagram, interviewed a bunch. I feel like there's just this piece that is so cool about the self-published community that honestly, I would just hope never goes away, because people who are self-publishing are so helpful because they know how difficult the struggle is. Before we continue, here's a message from this episode's sponsor, Workaholics. Workaholics is an American apparel company that specializes in fitness merchandise. They create clothing that gives you a comfortable feel even when the workout's tough. When your tank is on E,
ask yourself, how hard you working? That defines them, but that's the question that also will help you become the best version of yourself. You can follow them at work_merch_ on Instagram. That's at work, WERK _merch_ on Instagram. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah. And that we still willingly choose to do it.
Yeah, every day.
The funny part of it. Yeah. No, like, you know, later tonight I'm gonna go back to my beta notes and I'm gonna read them and see how it goes. Oh my God. But no, it's fun. And you know what though, too, when I'm editing it after like taking some of your notes, my other beta readers notes, and making those adjustments, I like kind of want to give it back to you and my other beta readers and be like, all right, what do you think now? What do you think now? Like constant.
Literally, that's how I felt every single time I got feedback. There was one person who he gave some really good feedback page by page, and there was a point where I like set him back just an extra couple paragraphs, like, oh, this is just one of the problems you had. Like, I just wrote this. Like, let me know what you think. And he like read it, sent it back, and then he was like, oh, I love that. He's like, that's exactly what you need to do. And I was like, it was amazing. But he was like the only person, because I just felt so compelled to tell him, like, I did it. Like, I fixed it. So talk a little bit about your book. No spoilers. I know me and you both know the ending, but no spoilers. Talk a little bit about it. Where did the idea come from? Let's do that. Where did the idea come from? And then what's an overview? What's your pitch for the book? Why should people read it?
See, I never have to think about really a pitch for my book because I'm not seeking agents. Like, so I don't worry about that. Okay, well, my idea for my book, I don't really know where it came from. It came from everywhere inside me. It started with the idea that there was going to be, like, everybody had a social security number, and based on your social security number, it was actually a date that was like coded to when that person was going to die. I think that was it, when they were going to die. I don't really know. And I wrote maybe the first 30 pages of that story, but then didn't really know where it was going. Stopped writing that, kept thinking about it, developing it. And then honestly, I just started rewriting and writing until I finished this story. And then midway through my book, I then paused and wrote about how I want it to look. Because then I'm like, oh no, this is actually now becoming something. It's not like before that first 30 pages where it was so all over the place, or it was just like an idea and nothing was formulated. So I really don't even know where it came from. I think I pulled a little bit from that. I pulled from interests that I had about chakras, about numerology, about meditation, about yoga, things like that. But I also really, really love and admire dystopian novels. So I know I wanted to write something like that, because to me, that's like my personal goal, where it's like, that's what I love. And if I could do that, then I'll love myself. It was like writer's math. It was like, this is what I need to do. So I don't know, that's kind of where it came from. But then I guess what my book is about, or why you should read it, is you should read it if you want to learn about individuality. I think that's like a theme, or I try to make it a theme in my book, because, on one end you have half of the society or whatever that is super high tech, they are part AI, quite literally, just totally immersed in technology. And then you have the second half of the society that are trying to be super spiritual and trying, whatever that means too, by the way, right? Like whatever spiritual is fitting that, like, oh, meditation, that yoga, like all of the things that sound good and good vibes, like all that. But neither of them are about individuality. It's kind of just about following the masses blindly. So I really try to bring my book in where it's like, you don't have to be this, or you don't have to be this label or this box, or you can like both, or like trying to just pull in a bunch of different, all of the different parts of societies and making it your own. Yeah, I don't know how that is for a pitch, but essentially that's like a theme about my book.
Nah, I love it. I think the think you're underselling the character work because I highly enjoyed your characters. I think there's some witty ones. There's some ones that are like sad, but I love them. Tragic characters. I think there's a piece of that I really enjoyed from my own read that I think other people would enjoy as well. I think there's something for everyone, even if you didn't mean for there to be. I like if that makes sense.
That's good.
Yeah, you know, like I feel like you had a lot of fun writing, and you can almost tell that you had a lot of fun with the world, which is always why I'm like, oh, I want more world building, I want more story.
My God.
It's because
you got it. It's in the making. Like I'm telling you, I took your advice and I'm running with it.
There we go. It's always so you can tell when an author really enjoys what they're writing, and it makes you want to explore it more. And I think a lot of people, when I've written, they've said the same. They've said like, hey, just go for it, right? Like we always think sometimes as authors that less can be more, right? I'm not going to overdo this scene. I don't want to go into too much detail. I don't want to like, you know, slow the pacing to a halt. Like I want to be able to tell this story and people to be able to get through it. But then like from the reader end, you're like, I want way more of this. Like I want to know exactly where this came from. Like where did this concept come from? Where did this thing exist? Like how did that start? And there's so many ways and so many places. And a lot of the books, especially the most successful ones, I've noticed a formula. And this is like this is a very separate side of this, but I've noticed like a formula to these freaking successful books. I've read a lot of Brandon Sanderson recently, some George R. Martin, and the Wheel of Time has made its resurgence, right, with the TV show that came out. One thing I've noticed is that a lot of these very successful books, Lord of the Rings included, fantasy books, they go into a lot of depth on all of the little things that make their world unique. And they consistently go into depth on little things. Like these people wear scarves because, and they always explain this because.
Because it's important. Yeah.
It literally is. And they do it so consistently where like Wheel of Time gets criticized for being like incredibly slow, except it's a 13-book series and people still read it. Malazan is a 10-book or 11-book series. People still read it. It's incredibly slow and full of detail, but it's a bestseller. People love it. Harry Potter is a huge, thick book full of detail, but people love it. And I think it's because when you get immersed into a world, you really want to know all of the little things. Like every little concept makes a huge difference. So I've kind of challenged myself as a writer to think about that more as I'm writing, like how many, like the small details that I skip over for the sake of pacing sometimes are the very thing that the reader is looking for to be that much more immersed in the world or know that much more about the characters. Because, and then from there, I always think world building just leads to more story because now you have all of this other stuff that you have not thought about.
That is why my book is becoming a trilogy, because as I'm writing, it's literally like, you start building more and you're like, oh my God, a whole nother book idea. Like, really? And like, and now I already have I started working on making an outline for my second book as soon as I finished my first and went back and edited. And it really does just grow, especially when you do have a book that is taking place in a different world, like entirely. You need the detail like that. I mean, perhaps if it's like a murder mystery or a romance, those are still excellent books that have their time to shine in their great detail in their own way. But that is when the pacing maybe is a little bit faster or quicker because we're already so familiar with maybe New York City where the book takes place. But when you're writing in a place that doesn't quite exist, you need to explain things a little bit or the reader is going to be very confused because it's quite literally a whole new world.
Yeah, like a whole new world. Like something different
but it's
entirely.
So fun.
It's so fun. So I wanted to ask another question before we wrap up. One, where can people connect with you? Where can they find you online?
So my Instagram, Carolyn, CAROLYN _ Rose_Potts. Twitter, same thing. So Instagram, Twitter, I'm making an all authors account. You need to, I think, officially be published first in order to like claim your spot. It's like this secret society thing. So that's in the process. But it'll be the same thing. Or if you just literally type in Authors Anonymous, that's my other podcast with AR. That'll probably pop up. Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, all of it.
Awesome. And so as an author, what are your big tips for people as they enter the new year and they continue to write as they go through their journey? I've listened to your podcast. I know you have a ton of things to contribute. What are 3 or 4 things that authors should be doing this year?
Okay, eavesdrop on as many people as you can, because if you want to write good dialogue, you gotta listen to how people talk. That is a tip. And I eavesdrop, but not even like to be weird with it, although I am weird, but it's fine. But like, listen to how people talk. You don't have to care about the conversation, but noticing, how they reference things. How many times do people say like or so, or not that you have to write every single time, but you get the feel then of what you want your characters to sound like. So eavesdrop on people. Definitely just finish your book. You don't even think about finishing it. Just go and write it until it finishes itself. That is what I did with my book. I didn't even put an end date for it. I didn't even think about afterwards when I finish it until I finished it. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, just taking it one day at a time. Same thing with your writing. You are writing what you're writing that day. And as long as it's a paragraph, a page, 50 pages, I don't care. It's growing. So just finish it. Just write it. Third thing is make a writer's Instagram so that you can connect with people and get all of these tips. Because sometimes you can go down a rabbit hole if you're just straight up Googling how to self-publish, and like now you have a world wide web of information. So sometimes making that social media and using it for the right reasons to connect with people and, begin promoting your book and your book ideas can be a lot more helpful than the internet can sometimes. So yeah, those 3 things should kick your year off to a pretty good start, especially the eavesdropping. Definitely that one.
I love that because as we're looking at going to a new year, there's always these things that are missing, right? These pieces of information, these nuggets. Like I didn't even think to eavesdrop, but now I'm like, when I'm out and about at Stop and Shop.
Well, and you do find out the weirdest stuff about people, and sometimes it's made me actually like people more, because I'm like, you are. Like, you guys all have such interesting lives. It made me excited to write more when I'd hear how people would talk, because sometimes I would take that as a writing prompt. I'd be like, she did what? And I would like finish that story out later at night. I'd write about it. Like, these poor strangers have no idea what they've gotten themselves.
No idea what kind of story got told about them. Last thing before you go, talk about your favorite character that you've written. Who is that character? Why are they your favorite, and why are all the other characters going to be mad about that choice?
My favorite character that I'd written. Oh, I don't know. I liked Sid and Maria, I think, together. I like their characters. Mostly because I did have fun trying to write out that romance part, because I don't really ever expect myself to write a romance book, but it was kind of fun to play that a little bit in there. So they were the most fun for me to write, but I also really like Kenneth, just because he's such a weird guy. And it does have kind of such a sad life. I feel bad for him. So maybe it's more of like a sympathetic type of thing towards Kenneth. My other characters are going to be mad because I kill a couple of them. So they're probably a little bit upset about that. Yeah.
It's because they're not in existence anymore.
Yeah, right.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh God,
I've enjoyed talking to you. Oh, of course. That's the least I can do.
It's been good.
It's been good. This has been an episode of Scribbled Notes. Peace out.
I'm out.
Yeah. You are now rocking with the greatest podcast, Scribbled Notes. Great topics, good conversations. Every week, Scribbled Notes. You don't want to miss. And if you miss, make sure you tune in. Scribbled Notes. Yeah. Scribbled Notes. Scribbled notes when I wrote these quotes. If I offend, pardon me, there's more of me to grow. Creative in my process, enjoy the show. The will is different when you recognize the different strokes. Different folks, same goals, we all want the most. So when we reach the top, we can enjoy the toast. The type of bread we get is fresh about the bakery. Told them don't play with me. With or without a degree, don't question my intensity. Bravery, similar to agencies that want to see you fall. So just pray for me. Einstein with my energy, mass times infinity. Been a gift since I laid my eyes on that Christmas tree. The star at the top told me what I'm supposed to be. Can't relate, you not dope as me. I'm everything I hope I be. Sometimes the road less travels ends up turning to Canal Street. Notes. You are now rocking with the greatest podcast, Scribbled Notes. Great topics, good conversations. Every week, Scribbled Notes. You don't want to miss. And if you miss, make sure you tune in.